President Trump's erratic foreign policy moves continue to sow confusion and concern among U.S. allies and adversaries. Yesterday, he followed through on his threats against multiple NATO countries by announcing that starting in February, they will be charged a 10% tariff on goods sent to this country, a levy that will increase in June to 25% until, quote, a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Now, this comes as troops from several European countries arrived in the territory this week in response to President Trump's escalating threats. And yesterday, after Trump's tariff announcement, France said it was joining that list. European leaders have expressed alarm at the new tariffs. According to Reuters, the EU has called an emergency meeting for today. Meanwhile, one of the United States' closest friends and neighbors is now working with one of our adversaries. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney announced this week that his country has forged a, quote, new strategic partnership with China. And President Trump's tariff wars with a new trade deal that slashes the 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. While in Beijing, Canada's Prime Minister also warned President Trump to back off his threats to take Greenland. Nothing about this makes any kind of sense.
I cannot say it better than Benji Sarlin, who tweeted yesterday, I'm trying to think of a more unpopular policy idea on paper, and it's hard to do better than raise consumer prices to militarily pressure Greenland.
It's confusing. Yesterday, he announced tariffs on all these countries: Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland, just as his administration was starting to move back a little bit from at least adding new tariffs. They were pulling back things like on bananas, I think was one of them. Like, look at that. These are countries who have been our allies for a very long time. Denmark is, and other countries on there are founding members of NATO.
Right.
I think that one of the things I think that is most interesting about, well, concerning maybe is a better word to use,
yes,
when it comes to Donald Trump's foreign policy, is that what you hear from our allies and our adversaries, frankly, is that, like, you have no idea where the United States is going or thinking, right?
Right.
And the changes, when there have been changes between administrations, right? When you go from Bush to Obama, the domestic policy is very different. But the foreign policy actually isn't that different, right? Post-World War II, the United States foreign policy there's been like little tweaks, but for the most part, it's been pretty consistent. And so the world has been able to kind of guesstimate and understand what the administration is going to do. And you can work on things from administration to administration. That is no longer the case, and they just can't trust us anymore.
Well, and they haven't been able to trust us since President Trump won the first time. When Vice President Harris went to the Munich Security Conference, in her first year as vice president, she gave a fantastic speech and did a Q&A with the then outgoing president of the Munich Security Forum. And his first question to her was, is the United States back? Because President Biden said the United States is back, and the world was relieved, but Europe even then was like, we're watching and we're not sure. And now their worst nightmares have come true. I mean, NATO was formed and supported, buttressed by the United States. And now you've got all these countries that have depended on each other, but especially the United States. And now the United States has to be looked at as an adversary.
If people hadn't already taken away from the first administration that they could no longer rely on the U.S. government, that is, I think, the biggest takeaway and perhaps the most concrete change Trump has made when it comes to this presidency, from domestic institutions to international. But I think what these threats actually really lay bare for me is that the national security argument of countering China and Russia that Trump has been making is a pretext.
Correct.
Because what these tariffs do, as our colleague Catherine Rampell wrote about very smartly, is they help those two countries. They help our adversarial superpowers, and it does continue to scratch at that question of what is Trump actually doing here?
They've pushed Canada closer to China. That's not good for us. They're right there.
Maybe they're just trying to split the world into spheres of influence, which is what Stephen Miller wants to do. China has its sphere, Russia has its sphere, the United States has its sphere.
Or spheres of control.
I was not expecting to have such a lively host chat at this hour, but we have to go.
Here we go.